A poor waitress sheltered 10 bikers, unknowingly awakening a decades-old debt. This single act of kindness plunges her into a dangerous war between rival clubs, forcing her to confront a hidden past and a future she never imagined. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at the heat-cracked vinyl booths and the single weary customer nursing a cold cup of coffee. Mia wiped down the counter for the third time in 10 minutes, the frayed edge of her apron a testament to a long, unprofitable shift. The storm was the final nail in the coffin of a terrible week. The eviction notice from a developer named Paul Finch burned a hole in her pocket, a constant, heavy reminder that her mother's legacy had mere days left. The bell above the door jangled violently, not with a cheerful ding, but with a metallic shriek of protest. The door flew open, and the storm rushed in, bringing with it a group of men who seemed carved from the very darkness outside. They were massive, draped in soaked leather vests adorned with patches she couldn't quite read, their faces etched with grim lines and glistening with rain. Water pooled around their heavy boots on the worn linoleum floor. The leader, a man with a close-cropped salt and pepper beard and eyes the color of a winter sky, stepped forward. His voice was a low rumble, deeper than the thunder outside. "We're not looking for trouble, just a place to wait this out." Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct, every headline she'd ever read, screamed at her to lock the door, to call the police. But then she looked at them. They were shivering, their formidable stature doing little to combat the chill that had seeped into their bones. She saw the weariness in their eyes, a mirror of her own. This diner was her mother's place, and her mother, Rose, had never turned away a soul in need. Swallowing her fear, she forced a calm she didn't feel. "Booths are all free. I've got coffee on, and the chili's still warm." She gestured with her chin towards the large empty space at the back. "You can push some tables together." The leader, whose name she would learn was Mark, gave a curt, grateful nod. As the 10 men settled in, their presence seemed to suck all the air and space from the small diner. They were quiet, speaking in low murmurs, their leather creaking with every movement. Mia moved on autopilot, pouring 10 mugs of black coffee, ladling steaming bowls of chili. Her only other customer, old Mr. Henderson, threw a terrified look at her, left a $5 bill on the counter, and scurried out into the storm without a word. So much for his tip. For an hour, the only sounds were the relentless storm and the clinking of spoons against bowls. Mia stayed behind the counter, trying to make herself small, observing them. They were rough, no doubt, but there was a strange discipline to them. They didn't leer or make crude jokes. They just were. When the lights flickered one last time and died, plunging the diner into near-total darkness, save for the emergency light over the grill, a collective tension filled the room. Mark stood up, his silhouette immense against the stormlit window. "We've taken enough of your time. We'll head out." "Don't be ridiculous," Mia heard herself say, her voice steadier than she expected. She was already lighting the old kerosene lanterns her mother kept for emergencies. "You'll get hypothermia or get struck by lightning. The back room has some space, and there are blankets. It's not the Ritz, but it's dry." A younger biker with a fiery red beard named James opened his mouth, likely to protest, but Mark silenced him with a look. That look held a universe of unspoken communication. He turned back to Mia, his gaze intense, searching. "You're Rose's girl, aren't you?" "Mia?" A cold dread, different from her fear of the storm or the eviction, trickled down her spine. "How did you know that?" Mark didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked slowly to the counter, his eyes fixed on a small, faded black and white photograph tucked beside the cash register. It was a picture of her mother, young and laughing, her arms slung around the shoulders of a handsome, dark-haired man on a motorcycle. Mia had always assumed it was a father she never knew. Mark reached out, his thick, calloused fingers surprisingly gentle as he traced the image of the man. His name was Daniel, our founder, our first president. He looked at Mia, and for the first time she saw the hard ice in his eyes melt into something akin to reverence. "Your mother saved his life once, a long time ago, pulled him from a wreck, hid him from the law when he was a young, hot-headed kid. He made a vow, a blood oath. Any debt to Rose or her blood is a debt to the entire Iron Sinners MC. We just didn't know where you were." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the flickering lantern light. "Until now." The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling under a brilliant sun. The bikers had left at dawn with a quiet thank you and a $100 bill tucked under a coffee mug. Mia felt a strange emptiness in the diner, a lingering energy of their presence. She chalked it up to a bizarre night and tried to focus on the grim reality of the eviction. Paul Finch was due today for his final inspection, a thinly veiled threat to ensure she was packing. She was scrubbing the grill when she heard it. At first, it was a single low rumble in the distance, then another and another. Soon the rumble became a roar, a deafening, earth-shaking cacophony that grew steadily louder. Dishes began to vibrate on the shelves. Mia ran to the window, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't just a few motorcycles. It was a river of them, an endless, rolling tide of chrome and black leather flowing down the two-lane highway towards her diner. They kept coming, bike after bike, ridden by men and women who looked as though they'd ridden straight out of a myth. Their vests all bore the same patch, a demonic angel breaking its chains with the words Iron Sinners MC arched above it. They filled her parking lot, then the field next to it, then lined the highway for as far as she could see. The lead bike stopped and Mark dismounted, a small, grim smile on his face. Behind him, a man even larger and more imposing, with a face that looked like a roadmap of old battles, stepped forward. This was David, the club's president. He walked up to the stunned Mia, who was standing frozen in the doorway. He took her hand, his grip firm but not harsh. "Mia, your mother was a saint to us. Mark's phone call last night triggered the old bylaw. Article 7, a debt of shelter is a debt of honor. We are 999 strong, and we are all in your debt." As if on cue, the sea of bikers dismounted in a synchronized, practiced motion. They didn't mill about. They got to work. Some started washing windows with a military efficiency she'd never seen. Others began repairing the loose shingles on the roof. A group of women, led by a fierce-looking but beautiful woman named Elena, started moving tables, setting up an outdoor grilling station, and creating a perimeter around the property as if they were fortifying a castle. It was then that a sleek black sedan pulled up, its silence an affront to the roaring symphony of motorcycles. Paul Finch stepped out, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the sea of leather. His smug expression faltered, then twisted into pure, unadulterated fury as he took in the scene. "What is the meaning of this?" he spat, marching towards Mia. "This is a violation of a dozen codes. I'll have the police here in 5 minutes." David moved before Mia could even flinch. He didn't run or shout. He simply stepped between Finch and Mia, his presence an immovable wall. "The lady is under our protection," David said, his voice quiet but carrying over the sudden silence that had fallen over the bikers. Every single one of them had stopped what they were doing and was now staring at Finch with a cold, unified intensity. Finch paled, but his eyes blazed with a hatred that felt personal, far beyond a simple real estate deal. "This isn't over," he hissed, his gaze locking with David's in a clear, unspoken challenge. "You've just chosen your grave." He scrambled back into his car and sped away. The tension broke, and the work resumed, but the mood had shifted. The lightheartedness was gone, replaced by a grim purpose. Mia felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the morning chill. This was more than just saving a diner. Later that day, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the diner was transformed. It was cleaner, sturdier, and more alive than it had been in years. The parking lot was a makeshift festival, with grills flaming and coolers of beer being open. Music, classic rock, not the tinny pop from her radio, filled the air. Mia was carrying a heavy tub of dirty dishes when a voice beside her said, "Let me get that." It was James, the red-bearded biker from the night before. He took the tub from her as if it weighed nothing, his forearm brushing against hers. A jolt, hot and unexpected, shot up her arm. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the chaotic noise around them faded. He had startlingly green eyes, full of a mischievous fire that both intrigued and terrified her. He was younger than the others, maybe early 30s, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Thanks," she managed, her voice a little breathless. "Don't mention it," he said, his smile a quick white flash in his beard. "We can't have our damsel in distress overexerting herself." "I'm not a damsel," she retorted, a spark of her own defiance igniting. His smile widened. "No, I'm starting to see that." He held her gaze for a beat too long before turning to carry the tub to the makeshift washing station. Mia's heart was pounding. She turned and almost collided with Elena, who was watching the exchange with a knowing, slightly amused look. "Don't mind James," Elena said, her voice a smoky contralto. "He's the club's resident troublemaker, but his heart's in the right place, usually buried under a pile of bad decisions and broken taillights." She handed Mia a cold bottle of water. "You handled yourself well today. Not many people can stand their ground when David gets going." "Who is Paul Finch, really?" Mia asked, the question that had been gnawing at her all day, finally spilling out. This felt personal. Elena's smile vanished. She glanced around before leaning in closer. "Finch is a suit, a puppet. The money and the legal threats come from him. But the muscle, the real threat, that comes from the Vipers." She said the name like it was a curse. "They're a rival club, nasty, soulless pieces of work. We've been in a cold war with them for territory for years. This diner, your land, it's the last piece they need to control the trucking route through this valley. By standing with you, we've just declared a very hot war." The reality of the situation crashed down on Mia. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was a battlefield, and she was the prize. She looked out at the sea of bikers, at James laughing with his brothers, at David holding a quiet strategic meeting under the old oak tree. These weren't just saviors. They were a dangerous, complicated family, and she had been thrust into the very center of their world. Her mother's past, a past she knew nothing about, had come back to claim her, and it was dressed in leather and roaring on two wheels. The storm from last night was nothing compared to the one that was just beginning. The next few days passed in a surreal blur. The Iron Sunrise, as the bikers had christened it, became the busiest diner in the state. News vans came and went, but the club handled them with a quiet, intimidating efficiency that sent them packing. The local police chief, an old friend of David's from way back, paid a visit, shared a coffee, and left with a handshake, effectively giving the club his tacit blessing. Mia found herself in a whirlwind of strange new routines. Mornings were spent cooking for a small army. Afternoons were for training, as Elena called it. It started with simple things. "Always be aware of your exits," Elena instructed one afternoon, her tone all business. She'd taken Mia to the back of the diner. "If someone comes in that gives you a bad feeling, you don't wait to see if you're right. You go out this back door, through the alley, and to the safe house 2 blocks over. James has the key." James, who was leaning against the wall sharpening a hunting knife with a rhythmic shink-shink sound, nodded without looking up. "I'll show you the route later." Mia felt a thrill of fear, but also a sense of being cared for, protected in a way she hadn't felt since her mother died. The lessons continued. How to throw a proper punch. "Thumb on the outside unless you want to break it," James demonstrated, his hand enveloping hers to correct her form, sending another one of those electric charges through her. How to use a fire extinguisher as a weapon. How to listen for the specific rumble of a Viper's motorcycle, a higher-pitched, more aggressive snarl than the deep thrum of the Harleys. It was during these sessions that the chemistry between Mia and James became a tangible thing, a third presence in the room. It was in the way his hand would linger on her shoulder when he moved past her, the way his gaze would follow her as she moved around the diner, a mixture of raw attraction and a protective ferocity that made her stomach flip. One evening, she was trying to fix the stubborn old percolator, her hands covered in grease, muttering curses under her breath. "Need a hand?" His voice was close, right behind her. She jumped, turning to find him standing inches away. The kitchen was empty, the diner closed. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "I think it's possessed," she said, trying to sound casual. But her heart was doing a frantic tap dance against her ribs. James reached around her, his chest barely brushing her back, and fiddled with a wire she hadn't even seen was loose. With a click and a gurgle, the machine shuddered to life. "See?" he murmured, his voice a low vibration near her ear. "Just needed the right touch." She turned her head, and their faces were suddenly dangerously close. His eyes dropped to her lips. The air grew thick, charged with an unspoken want. She could smell leather, engine oil, and the faint, clean scent of soap on his skin. It was the most potent cocktail she'd ever encountered. He leaned in, just a fraction, his intention clear. Then a loud crash from the front of the diner made them spring apart. One of the prospects, a young kid named Leo, had dropped a tray of clean glasses. The moment was shattered, but the heat of it lingered between them, a promise of something more, something dangerous and intoxicating. The tension with the Vipers escalated. A truck delivering her weekly food order was waylaid, its tires slashed and the cargo ruined. Graffiti, a coiled snake, appeared on the side of the diner one night, only to be painted over within minutes by a scowling James and his crew. The Iron Sinners responded with a quiet, brutal efficiency. Rumor had it that 2 known Viper associates were found in the river, unharmed but missing their prized motorcycle jackets, a message that was both humiliating and crystal clear. David decided it was time for a show of force, a charity ride, he called it, to raise money for the local fire department. Everyone knew it was a parade, a demonstration of their numbers and their unity. Mia was to ride on the back of James's bike. The morning of the ride, her hands were trembling as she stood beside his gleaming, black fat boy. It looked less like a vehicle and more like a wild beast, resting but ready to pounce. "Never been on one before?" James asked, holding out a spare helmet. His expression was softer than usual. "Never," she admitted. He helped her put the helmet on, his fingers gently buckling the strap under her chin. "Just hold on to me. Lean when I lean. Don't fight it. Trust me." Those 2 words, "trust me," felt heavier than the bike itself. She climbed on behind him, her hands tentatively resting on his hips. The engine roared to life beneath her, a powerful vibration that traveled through her entire body. As they pulled out, leading a seemingly endless column of 500 motorcycles, the sound was deafening, overwhelming. But then, as they picked up speed, the wind whipping past them, the world became a blur of color and sound. She was pressed against his back, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, her body moving in sync with his as they leaned into the curves. The fear melted away, replaced by a breathtaking sense of freedom, of power, of belonging. She understood in that moment why they loved this. It was pure, unadulterated flight. She rested her helmeted head against his leather-clad back and closed her eyes, just feeling it. When the ride ended back at the diner, she was giddy, her cheeks flushed, her eyes bright. As she dismounted, her legs a little wobbly, James caught her arm to steady her. "You okay?" he asked, his green eyes searching hers. "More than okay," she breathed, a genuine, unburdened smile spreading across her face for the first time in years. "That was incredible," he smiled back, a real, unguarded smile that transformed his face. "You're a natural, Mia." He reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his knuckles brushing her cheek. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. The roar of the other bikes, the cheers of the crowd, it all faded into a distant hum. This time there was no one to interrupt them. But the moment was stolen once again, this time by David. "James, a word!" His tone brooked no argument. James's smile vanished, the shutters coming down over his eyes. He gave Mia a last lingering look before following his president inside. Mia's euphoria evaporated, replaced by a cold knot of anxiety. She followed them at a distance, hovering near the kitchen door, which was slightly ajar. She could hear their voices, low and tense. "Getting too close, James," David was saying. "She's not one of us. She's a responsibility, a debt." "She's more than that, and you know it," James shot back, his voice tight with frustration. "She's got more spine than half the prospects we've patched in." "That's not the point." David's voice rose, a rare crack in his composure. "The Vipers are getting bolder. Finch is filing new motions every day. There's a mole, James. Someone is feeding them our movements. Until I find out who, no one is safe. Especially not her. Your focus is the club. Your loyalty is to the club. Don't let a pretty face make you forget that." What happened with Jennifer? We can't have a repeat. It almost tore us apart. The name Jennifer hung in the air, a ghost from a past Mia knew nothing about. She heard James let out a frustrated growl, but he didn't argue further. Mia slipped away, her heart aching with a confusing mix of emotions. She was a debt, a responsibility, a potential distraction. The warmth she'd felt on the back of his bike felt like a lie. She was a pawn in a game she didn't understand, a game with rules written in blood long before she was born. The fairy tale was over. The war was real, and she was just a symbol, a piece of property to be defended. The weight of her mother's secret past felt heavier than ever, a legacy she never asked for, threatening to crush the first real connection she'd felt in years. The next day, The atmosphere at the diner was thick with unspoken tension. James was distant, all business, throwing himself into perimeter checks and mechanic work on the bikes. Mia threw herself into her work, scrubbing and polishing with a frantic energy, trying to wash away the hurt and confusion. It was late afternoon when an old weathered man, leaning heavily on a cane, shuffled into the diner. He was dressed in clean but faded denim, and on his jacket was a small tattered patch, an old faded version of the Iron Sinner's demon angel. "Can I help you?" Mia asked, forcing a polite smile. The old man's eyes, milky with cataracts, seemed to look right through her. "I'm looking for Rose's daughter," he rasped. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning swept through Mia. "I'm Mia. Rose was my mother." The old man nodded slowly, a sad smile touching his wrinkled lips. "You have her eyes." He gestured to a booth. "May I? I have a story you need to hear. About your mother and Daniel, and the real reason this diner is so important." Mia's breath hitched. This was it, the key to the mystery. She slid into the booth opposite him, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The old man took a slow, rattling breath and began to speak, his voice a whisper of history, ready to change everything. He placed his gnarled hands on the formica table, the knuckles swollen and misshapen. "Name's Arthur. I rode with Daniel from the very beginning, when this was all just a dream in a beat-up chopper in a leaky garage." He looked around the diner, his sightless eyes seeming to take it all in. "Your mother, Rose, she was the sun to our darkness. We were wild, stupid kids, but she saw something in Daniel, something worth saving." He told her a story she'd never heard. Her mother, young and vibrant, working at this very diner when it was called the Crossroads. Daniel, not yet a legend, but a charismatic, reckless young man, had gotten into a shootout with a rival gang, the precursors to the Vipers. He'd been shot, bleeding badly, and stumbled his way here, collapsing at the counter. "Rose didn't call the cops," Arthur whispered, a hint of pride in his voice. "She hid him in the basement, the one with the old root cellar door you probably keep the pickles in now. She nursed him back to health for a week. The Vipers were crawling all over town looking for him. She risked everything, not just for him, but for his dream." Daniel told her about the club he wanted to build, one with a code. Not just thugs on bikes, but brothers, a family. She believed in him. Mia listened, mesmerized, the world outside fading away. This was the woman she remembered, fiercely protective, endlessly kind. But there was more. When he was strong enough to leave, Arthur continued, his voice dropping even lower, he made the vow, the old bylaw. He told her, "Any debt to you or your blood is a debt to me and mine, forever." He gave her that photograph. But it wasn't just gratitude, girl. He loved her, and she loved him. The words hit Mia like a physical blow. "What?" Arthur nodded sadly. "Oh yes, it was a forbidden thing. He was an outlaw. She was a small-town girl with her whole life ahead of her. He knew his path was one of violence and uncertainty. He left to build his empire, promising to come back for her when it was safe. He never did. He was killed in a raid 6 months later. Rose found out she was pregnant a week after his funeral. The air left Mia's lungs. The world tilted. The handsome man in the photograph wasn't some fling. He was her father. The legendary founder of the Iron Sinners MC was her father. She was not just a debt. She was blood. The blood of their founder. Does David know?" she stammered, her voice trembling. Arthur shook his head. "No. Daniel made me swear to keep it secret. He didn't want his child growing up in his shadow with a target on her back." Rose agreed. "She wanted you to have a normal life. But the oath remained. I'm an old man, Mia. I'm dying. And with the Vipers circling, you needed to know who you are. You're not just a waitress they're protecting, you're their princess. This diner isn't just a piece of land. It's the place where the Iron Sinners were truly born, in the heart of the woman who saved their king." The weight of the revelation was crushing, yet in a strange way, it was also freeing. All the puzzle pieces of her life, her mother's sadness, the mysterious past, her own feeling of not quite belonging, suddenly snapped into a heartbreaking, perfect picture. She had a family, a chaotic, dangerous, leather-clad family she never knew existed. Just then, the door burst open. James stood there, his face a mask of panic that morphed into confusion when he saw her sitting with Arthur. "Mia, are you okay? We got a call there was a suspicious old man." "It's fine, James," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "He's a friend." James looked skeptical but nodded, his eyes scanning her face, seeing the tear tracks she hadn't even realized were there. "What's wrong? What did he say to you?" Arthur slowly, painfully got to his feet. "I've said my piece. The rest is for you to decide, child." He patted her hand and shuffled past James and out the door, disappearing as quietly as he came. James moved to the booth, sliding in where Arthur had been. "Mia, talk to me." She looked at him, really looked at him, the green eyes filled with genuine concern, the strong jaw tight with worry. He wasn't just a biker following an order. He was part of her legacy. The truth was a burning ember in her chest, desperate to be let out. But Arthur's warning echoed in her mind. He didn't want his child growing up with a target on her back. If she told James, she would be pulling that target onto herself permanently. She would become a symbol in a way she wasn't ready for. So she told him a half-truth. "He knew my mother." He confirmed the story about her saving Daniel. She took a shaky breath. "He also said the Vipers have a mole inside the club. That's how they knew about the food delivery. How they know our movements?" James's expression darkened instantly, all personal concern replaced by club business. "A mole?" he hissed, his hands curling into fists on the table. "Who?" He didn't know, but he was sure. This part, at least, was the full truth. "James, this is bigger than my diner. This is about the club's survival." The revelation of the mole created a seismic shift within the ranks of the Iron Sinners. Paranoia became a new companion to the scent of grease and coffee. The easy camaraderie was strained, brothers eyeing brothers with a new suspicious light. David called church, a closed-door meeting for full-patch members only, in the diner's back room. Mia could hear the raised voices, the occasional bang of a fist on a table. She busied herself making a massive pot of coffee, her mind reeling. She was the daughter of Daniel. The knowledge was a live wire inside her, changing her perception of every single person in the club. They were her family. This was her birthright, and it was being threatened from within. The door to the back room opened, and the members filed out, their faces grim. David came last, his gaze finding Mia. He walked over to the counter, looking older and more tired than she'd ever seen him. "The mole," he said quietly, without preamble. "It's the only thing that makes sense. We're putting a plan in motion. A dangerous one. We're going to leak false information about a major shipment coming through here tomorrow night. A shipment of high-value goods." He meant guns. "If the Vipers show up, we'll know the mole took the bait, and we'll be waiting for them." Mia's blood ran cold. "You're using my diner as bait? For a war?" "It's already the battleground, Mia," David said, his voice gentle but firm. "This is just choosing the time and place. We need to draw them out to expose the cancer in my club." He looked at her, his eyes holding a strange, paternal softness. "You should go to the safe house. Elena will take you." "No," Mia said, the word coming out sharper than she intended. Every eye in the diner turned to her. She straightened her spine, drawing on a strength she didn't know she had. Daniel's strength, Rose's strength. "This is my home, my legacy. I'm not running. I'll be in the basement, out of the way. But I'm staying." David studied her for a long moment, a flicker of respect in his gaze. He glanced at James, who was watching the exchange with a tense, unreadable expression. "Fine, but you do exactly as you're told. The basement, door locked, no matter what you hear." The rest of the day was a tense preparation for battle. Weapons were cleaned and distributed with a quiet, ritualistic efficiency. Lookouts were posted on the roof. The air was thick with the scent of oil, coffee, and impending violence. As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in deep purples and blues, James found Mia stocking the basement with water and a first aid kit, just in case. "You should let Elena take you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This isn't going to be a picnic, Mia. It's going to be ugly." She turned to face him, the single bare bulb in the basement casting long shadows on his face. "I know, but this is my fight too, maybe more than anyone else's." He took a step closer, the space between them crackling with all the unsaid things, with the truth she was carrying. "Mia, He trailed off, running a hand through his fiery hair in frustration. "When this is over, we need to talk. Really talk." "About what?" she asked, her heart hammering. "About how I'm a responsibility? A debt?" He flinched as if she'd struck him. "You heard that? Every word. It's not like that. Not for me." He closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to cradle her face. They were rough, capable hands, but his touch was unbearably gentle. "You have to know that. From the moment I saw you standing there in this diner, looking at 10 scary bikers like you were going to take us all on with a coffee pot, it's never been just about a debt for me." His thumb stroked her cheek, and she leaned into the touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a second. The world narrowed to this dusty basement, to his touch, to the raw honesty in his voice. "James, A sharp rap on the basement door above made them jump apart. "Positions!" David's voice boomed down the stairs. "They're coming!" The moment was gone, shattered by the grim reality outside. James's expression hardened, the lover replaced by the soldier. He pressed something cold and heavy into her hand. It was a small, snub-nosed revolver. "Do you remember what I taught you?" he asked, his voice all business again. She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "Safety's off. Point and pull. Only if you have to." His eyes met hers one last time, a storm of fear, determination, and something else. Something that looked an awful lot like love. "Lock the door behind me." Then he was gone, taking the stairs 2 at a time and closing the heavy door behind him. She heard the bolt slide shut from the outside, locking her in. She was alone in the silent, dark basement, the weight of the gun in one hand and the crushing weight of her secret in the other. The only sound was the frantic beating of her own heart, and then, in the distance, the first, unmistakable, high-pitched snarl of a Viper's motorcycle. The battle for her home, for her family, for her very identity, was about to begin. The roar outside grew from a single snarl into a deafening swarm. It was answered by the deeper, more powerful thrum of the Iron Sinner's hogs. Mia stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, the cold revolver a forgotten weight in her hand. Shouts, curses, and then the sickening crunch of metal on metal echoed from the parking lot. This was no longer a distant threat. It was a symphony of violence happening just feet above her head. A gunshot rang out, sharp and terrifyingly loud. Then another, and another. It was a staccato rhythm of chaos. She could hear David's voice, roaring commands, and the higher-pitched, taunting yells of the Vipers. Something heavy slammed against the front of the diner, shaking the foundation and raining dust down on her from the ceiling. A motorcycle? A body? Her fear was a living thing, clawing at her throat, but beneath it, a fierce, protective rage began to burn. This was her home, her mother's home, the place where her father's dream had been nurtured. She wouldn't cower in the dark while it was destroyed. Creeping up the stairs, she pressed her eye to the narrow gap where the door met the frame. The view was fragmented like a horrifying film strip. She saw 2 sinners, faces she recognized from the kitchen crew, grappling with a viper in a coiled snake patch. She saw Elena, a avenging angel in leather, wielding a tire iron with brutal efficiency, and she saw James. He was a whirlwind of controlled violence, his movements fluid and deadly. He fought with a ferocity that was terrifying and beautiful to behold. Then she saw him, Paul Finch. He wasn't fighting, he was directing, like a general surveying his troops from the relative safety of his sedan, its engine still running. He was the architect of this, the suit who thought he could erase her history with a check and a legal document. A new sound cut through the din, the wail of sirens, distant but approaching fast. The police. A ripple of panic went through both sides. This changed the calculus. This was no longer just a biker brawl, it was a potential mass arrest. Finch heard it too. A smug, triumphant smile spread across his face. He shouted something to a large viper covered in tattoos, who immediately broke away from the fight and, to Mia's horror, started pouring gasoline from a canister around the perimeter of the diner. They weren't just here to fight. They were here to burn it all down, to erase the evidence and the symbol it represented. No, the words screamed in Mia's mind. Not my home, not my mother's memory. The mole. Arthur's words came back to her. The mole is the key. She scanned the chaotic scene, her heart pounding. Who was it? Who was betraying them? Her eyes darted from face to face, from patch to patch, and then she saw him. It was Leo, the young prospect, the one who had dropped the tray of glasses. He wasn't fighting. He was lingering near the back of the sinner's line, near the old oak tree, and he was on his phone, his head ducked, talking frantically. As she watched, he pointed directly towards the basement door, her door. He was telling them where she was. A cold certainty washed over her. The locked door wouldn't protect her. They were coming for her. The Vipers couldn't beat the sinners in a straight fight, but if they could capture her, the princess, they could force a surrender, or simply kill her and extinguish Daniel's line forever. The sirens were closer now. Lights flashed blue and red against the trees. The battle was disintegrating into a frantic scramble. Vipers were starting to retreat, leaping on their bikes and peeling out. The sinners, sensing victory, pressed their advantage. But the large Viper with the gas can was now striding purposefully toward the basement door, a Zippo lighter flickering to life in his hand. Leo, having given his report, melted back into the chaos, a ghost. Mia stumbled back from the door, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was trapped. The revolver felt alien and useless in her hand. She couldn't shoot him through the door. He would set the gas alight and she would be burned alive. Think, Mia, think. Her eyes darted around the dark, cluttered basement. The old root cellar, the one Arthur said her mother had hidden Daniel in. It was behind a stack of wooden crates, a small, heavy door set into the stone foundation. With a strength born of pure desperation, she shoved the crates aside, the wood splintering against her hands. She yanked open the root cellar door just as she heard the Viper's boots on the concrete steps outside the basement. The bolt screeched as he shot it out. She scrambled into the dank, earth-smelling darkness of the root cellar, pulling the door shut behind her just as the main basement door burst open. She held her breath, praying the old door blended into the wall in the darkness. She heard the Viper curse, his footsteps heavy on the concrete floor. "Where are you, little girl?" he taunted, his voice echoing in the small space. "Come on out. Finch just wants to talk." He was moving around, kicking over boxes. He was between her and the only exit. The Zippo was still lit. She could see its faint glow under the crack in the root cellar door. He was going to burn it. He was going to burn it all. Terror closed its icy fingers around her throat. But then, another sound. A familiar, powerful roar. It cut through the chaos outside and grew rapidly closer. It was a single bike, moving fast, recklessly. James. He must have seen the Viper break away. He must have known. The Viper heard it too. He turned towards the basement entrance, his attention diverted. "You're too late, sinner!" he yelled. That was her chance. Mia didn't think. She acted. She burst out of the root cellar, the revolver raised in both hands just as she'd been taught. "Don't move!" she screamed, her voice shrill with fear. The Viper spun around, surprised. For a split second, he was stunned to see her there, armed and defiant. Then a cruel smile twisted his lips. "Or what, sweetheart? You gonna shoot me?" In that frozen moment, time seemed to slow. She saw James appear at the top of the basement stairs, his face a mask of primal fear. She saw the Viper's hand, the one holding the Zippo, start to move, to toss it onto the gasoline-soaked floor. And she saw her mother's face. She saw Daniel's face. She saw the Sunrise Diner, not as a struggling business, but as a home, a sanctuary, a legacy. She pulled the trigger. The bang was deafening in the enclosed space, a physical shock wave that slammed into her ears. The recoil jarred her arms, her shoulders, snapping her head back. The Viper cried out, stumbling backward. The Zippo flew from his hand, clattering to the concrete floor, the flames snuffing out instantly. He clutched his thigh, dark blood welling between his fingers. He wasn't dead, but he was down. Mia stood there, trembling violently, the gun smoking in her hand, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling her nostrils. She felt sick. She had shot a man. James was at her side in an instant. He didn't look at the wounded Viper. His eyes were only for her. He gently pried the gun from her shaking fingers and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured into her hair, his own body trembling with adrenaline and relief. "You're okay. You're so brave. God, Mia, you're so brave." Outside, the sirens reached a crescendo, and the sounds of fighting died away, replaced by the shouts of police. The battle was over. But for Mia, holding on to James in the dim, gasoline-scented basement, the real war was just beginning. She had pulled the trigger. She had defended her home with violence. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. She was Mia, the waitress. She was Mia, Rose's daughter, and now she was Mia, Daniel's heir. The world of the Iron Sinners wasn't just protecting her anymore. She was part of it. And as she looked over James's shoulder at the wounded Viper, at the chaos spilling in from outside, she knew her life would never be the same again. He held her for a long time, while the world outside descended into a new kind of chaos, the bureaucratic aftermath of violence. She could hear the police bullhorns, the slamming of car doors, David's calm, authoritative voice negotiating. But in the basement, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing and the pained groans of the wounded Viper. "Look at me," James said softly, his hands cupping her face, forcing her tear-filled eyes to meet his. The green was blazing, intense with an emotion that went far beyond relief. "You saved this place. You saved yourself." "I shot him," she whispered, the reality of it crashing down on her again, the metallic smell of blood now mixed with the gasoline and gunpowder. "You stopped him," James corrected, his voice firm. "He was going to burn you alive. It wasn't a choice, Mia. It was a necessity. Welcome to the life." There was no judgment in his tone, only a grim acceptance. He was letting her see a part of the world he usually shielded her from. Before she could respond, heavy footsteps pounded down the stairs. David and two other sinners filled the doorway, their faces hardening as they took in the scene. The gas can, the spent shell casing, the bleeding Viper, and Mia shaking in James's arms. David's eyes met Mia's for a charged second. There was a new depth to his gaze, a reassessment. He gave her a slow, respectful nod. Then his attention snapped to business. "Get him out of here, now, before the cops decide to come down and be heroes." The two sinners moved with efficient brutality, hauling the cursing Viper to his feet and half dragging, half carrying him up the stairs and out a back way Mia didn't know existed. David turned to James. "The prospect, Leo. He's gone, slipped away in the confusion. But we know who he is now. The club will handle it." His eyes flicked back to Mia. "You need to come upstairs. The police will want a statement from the property owner. Stick to the script. They were vandals. You were hiding. You heard a struggle, a gunshot, and you found him like that. You know nothing else." The command was clear. This was part of the protection, the lies that kept them safe. Mia nodded, finding a core of steel she hadn't known she possessed. "I understand." The scene outside was a jarring contrast to the intimate horror of the basement. The parking lot was a sea of flashing red and blue lights, illuminating the wreckage of a few bikes and the diner's shattered front window. Cops were everywhere, but they moved with a certain deference around the Iron Sinners, who stood in a silent, imposing cluster. It was clear who had the real authority here. She gave her statement to a weary-looking detective, sticking to David's script word for word. She was just a waitress, a victim of random vandalism. She saw nothing. The detective seemed skeptical, but wrote it down. The presence of 999 bikers, most of whom had now quietly disappeared into the night, had a way of discouraging thorough investigation. As the police finally began to pack up, the sun started to peek over the horizon, staining the sky the same color as the diner's namesake. The storm of violence had passed, leaving a battered but standing peace. Exhaustion hit Mia like a physical wave. She leaned against the cracked frame of the diner's door, watching the sinners who remained begin the cleanup. James was beside her, a silent, solid presence. David walked over, his phone in his hand. "Finch is in the wind, but he's lost his muscle and his credibility. The Vipers are broken, at least in this territory. The mole is exposed, the club is secure." He looked at Mia, his expression unreadable. "You held your ground. Daniel would have been proud." The mention of her father's name, spoken with such casual reverence, stole the air from her lungs. James stiffened beside her, his head whipping towards David. "What did you say?" James asked, his voice dangerously low. David's eyes never left Mia's. He saw the truth in her face, the secret she could no longer hide. "It's time, Mia. They deserve to know. He deserves to know." The weight of it was too much. The confession tumbled out in a raw, broken whisper. "Daniel was my father." The silence that followed was profound. James took a step back as if she'd shoved him. All the color drained from his face. His eyes, which had been filled with warmth and concern, now scanned her features with a dawning, horrified realization. He was no longer looking at Mia, the waitress he was falling for. He was looking at Mia, the daughter of their founding saint, a figure on a pedestal, an untouchable symbol. "Your father?" he repeated, the word sounding foreign on his tongue. The charged chemistry that had arced between them all week seemed to short out and die, replaced by a chasm of history and club legend. "All this time, you knew? I only found out today," she pleaded, seeing the walls going up behind his eyes. "Arthur told me." "David, did you know?" David shook his head. "I had my suspicions. The way Daniel spoke of Rose, the oath he made, it was too personal, but he never confirmed it. He wanted to protect you." He looked at James, his voice firm. "This changes nothing about the club's duty. It only deepens it." "It changes everything," James breathed, his voice thick with a turmoil Mia couldn't fully comprehend. He looked betrayed, lost. He turned and walked away, not towards the chaos of the cleanup, but towards his bike, his shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. The pain of his retreat was a sharper wound than any gunshot. She had finally found a family, only to lose the one person who made her feel like she belonged in it. David watched him go, a sigh of understanding on his lips. "Give him time, Mia. You're not just a girl anymore. You're a legacy." That's a heavy thing for a man like James to carry. He has a history with legacies. Over the next week, a new fragile normalcy settled over the Sunrise Diner. The repairs were made, faster and better than before. Business boomed, a mix of curious locals and loyal sinners who now treated the place with a reverence that made Mia uncomfortable. She was no longer the waitress. She was Daniel's daughter. The looks she got were full of respect, but it was a distant, formal respect that kept her at arm's length. James was gone. David said he was on a long-distance run for the club, but Mia knew he was running from her. The emptiness he left behind was a constant ache. The memory of his touch, the heat in his eyes felt like a dream. It was Elena who finally broke the silence. She found Mia one evening after closing, polishing the same spot on the counter for the 10th time. "He'll be back," Elena said, leaning against the counter. "I don't even know what I did wrong," Mia confessed, the hurt spilling out. "I'm still me. It's not you. It's him." Elena's gaze was sympathetic. His last serious relationship was with a woman named Jennifer. She was the daughter of an old alliance, a political marriage for the club, basically. James fell for her hard, but she couldn't handle the life, the violence, the secrets. She used his feelings for her to try and manipulate the club, to gain power for her father. When James found out, it broke him. He vowed never to let his personal feelings get tangled up with the club's legacy again. She paused, letting the words sink in. "And then he meets you, and he falls hard and fast, and then he finds out you're the biggest legacy of them all. To him, it feels like history repeating, like his heart is just another piece of club business." The explanation was a key turning in a lock. His words from the argument with David, "What happened with Jennifer? We can't have a repeat," now made terrible, perfect sense. He wasn't pushing her away because she was a debt. He was pushing her away because she was everything he'd sworn to avoid, and he was terrified of losing himself in her. A few days later, the familiar rumble of a single motorcycle cut through the afternoon quiet. Mia's heart leaped into her throat. She watched from the window as James parked his bike. He looked tired, thinner, but the storm in his green eyes had settled into a determined calm. He walked into the diner. It was empty. The silence between them was heavy with everything that had been said and left unsaid. "I'm sorry I left," he said, his voice rough from the road. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," she replied, her own voice small. "David filled me in. About Jennifer. About everything." He took a step closer, his gaze intense, searching her face. "I've been riding for a week, trying to outrun it, but I can't. I kept seeing your face. Not Daniel's daughter's face. Your face. When you stood up to us that first night, when you smiled on the back of my bike, when you looked at me in the basement, terrified but unbroken." He closed the final distance between them. "The club is my life, Mia. It's my family. But you're becoming my heart, and I'm done fighting it." He didn't wait for an answer. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't like the stolen, interrupted moments before. This was a claiming, a confession. It was full of the desperation of their week apart, the relief of his return, and the fiery, unspoken promise of a future. It was passion and tenderness, violence and peace, all wrapped into one. She kissed him back with all the pent-up emotion she'd been carrying, her hands fisting in his leather vest, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the world had righted itself. "It's not going to be easy," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "The club, the life, it's messy and it's dangerous." "My life was a struggle before you walked in," she said, a genuine smile finally touching her lips. "At least this struggle has a family attached to it. And you." He smiled then, a real, full, unguarded smile that reached his eyes and lit up his whole face. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Weeks turned into months. The Sunrise Diner thrived, a legitimate, bustling business that also served as the unofficial and perfectly protected headquarters of the Iron Sinners MC. Mia learned to navigate her new reality. She was a business owner, a waitress, and a symbol. She managed the books by day and by night. She sat at the large table in the back, listening to club business. Her opinion valued not just because of her bloodline, but because of her sharp mind and unwavering loyalty. Her relationship with James was a constant, low-burning flame. It was passionate and real, but it existed within the complex rules of the club. There were stolen nights in his small apartment above the garage, filled with a heat that left her breathless and a tenderness that healed her old wounds. There were rides on his bike, where she would wrap her arms around him and feel utterly free. There were arguments, too, about his recklessness, about her safety, but they always found their way back to each other. One evening, during a rare quiet moment, David approached her. He slid an old leather-bound ledger across the counter to her. It was the club's founding charter. "I think it's time you had this," he said. "It's yours by right. Daniel's words, your mother's spirit, it's all in there." She ran her fingers over the worn leather, a sense of completion settling over her. She had found her place. She had found her family. She had found love in the most unexpected of places. Later that night, as she lay in James's arms, the sound of his steady heartbeat under her ear, she looked out the window at the neon Sunrise Diner sign glowing softly in the darkness. It was no longer a burden or a memory. It was a beacon, a promise of a new day, a testament to a mother's kindness, a father's dream, and a love that was forged in stormy weather and tempered in the fires of battle. The poor waitress had sheltered 10 bikers from a storm, and in return, she had found everything she never knew she was missing. Thank you for watching. Can you imagine what you would do if 999 bikers showed up at your door? Subscribe now and share your own wild stories in the comments below. Let us know which part of the world you're watching from.